The void shimmered around the Invarian flagship, inevitable, a juggernaut so massive it eclipsed the blue crescent of the planet below. From its obsidian surface protruded jagged spines and clustered weapon hives, glowing dimly like the eyes of sleeping predators. Admiral Zexalon, oldest living war tactician of the Hive Corps, stood unmoving on the command platform, his 4 insectoid arms folded in perfect discipline. His carapace gleamed beneath the pulsing red glow of the hive lights. Around him, his sub-commanders worked, in total silence, their neural links doing all the speaking that needed to be done. Below, Terrius IV was already buckling. The orbital stations were drifting wreckage. The surface cities, now little more than molten scars. The native defense grid, once a marvel of spiral reactor shielding, had lasted 47 minutes. Zexalon exhaled through his spiracles. Assimilation Protocol Delta is in progress. Yes, Supreme Admiral, came Sub-Commander Vextrus' reply via direct link. Ground resistance is fractured. Worker drones are en route for genetic harvest and infrastructure reformatting. Hive productivity will begin within 17 cycles. He gave a small chitter of acknowledgement. For 3 centuries, the Invarian hive had conquered without contest. 53 planetary systems consumed, dozens of species reduced to labor stock or recycled into biomass. The hive was perfect order, a single will, a single purpose, expansion, and yet, Admiral, another voice interrupted the serenity. Sensor Overseer Lennox broadcast a frequency ping, an unauthorized signal. Zexalon's mandibles clicked softly. From the Terrian survivors. No, Admiral. From outside the system. The main screen flared to life, revealing a ship unlike anything in their archives. Small, narrow, smooth hulls of matte black alloy. No external decoration, no radiant emitters. The vessel moved with cold, calculated haste. And then the voice came blunt and low, translated from an unfamiliar dialect to the invaders of Terrius IV. This is Aurora, scout vessel of the United Earth Alliance. You've committed aggression against a sovereign people. This is your warning. Withdraw. You will not be permitted to continue. Zexalon blinked slowly. Then he emitted a brief pulse of mocking static, a gesture of amusement. How? Quaint. There was silence on the bridge of the USS Defender, not the silence of peace, but the kind that settles over a crew when they all know they've just seen something they can never unsee. Commander Eric Wells stood at the center, his uniform half unbuttoned, a datapad clutched in his calloused hand. The broadcast from Aurora was still fresh in their memory, and the aftermath of Tarius Forthak was burned into their souls. 6 billion lives extinguished, cities flash-burned from orbit. Civilian comlinks had screamed into the void for 27 minutes before going dead. Wells hadn't spoken since the briefing ended. His eyes remained locked on the starfield ahead. Somewhere out there, just beyond the systems they'd mapped, was an empire that had never been stopped until now. Behind him, Lieutenant Amber Garrett, his tactical officer, finished her analysis. The scout ship made the warning transmission and then jumped. Smart, she said. It didn't have the firepower to engage. But now, they know we exist. Wells nodded once. His voice was gravel, low, grounded, and we know what they are. Around the bridge, the crew listened in grim silence. They were Earth's newest and most advanced warship, a product of peacetime budget, miracles, and post-Proxima engineering. A ship not meant to fight an empire, but to witness, to gather intel. Yet every face on that bridge knew, with the certainty of instinct, they would not return home unchanged. The holographic feed replayed on loop, orbital bombardment, molecular destabilization beams, the ground swarming with black-shelled Invarian soldiers, dozens moving with insectal precision, each one identical to the last. No radio chatter, no individual tactics, just overwhelming unity. "They're not just soldiers," said Science Officer Diane Chen, breaking the silence. "They're extensions, drones, one mind, one goal." "Assimilation," Amber muttered. "Just like the old horror novels." Wells ran a hand down his jaw. "This isn't fiction. It's evolution gone militant." "Commander," said Communications Officer Kelly Wright, turning in her seat. "Incoming transmission. High priority, Earth Command." Admiral Garcia, "Put him through." A moment later, Admiral Joseph Garcia filled the bridge's main display. The old man's face was granite, deep lines carved from decades of watching stars die and ships not return. "Commander Wells, we've reviewed Aurora's recordings. What's your analysis?" Wells straightened. Terrius IV was annihilated in hours. No warning, no demands, just extermination. "It's not conquest, Admiral, it's harvest." Garcia nodded slowly. "And their fleet, organized, relentless. We estimate 200 ships in the forward assault force, possibly more waiting in jump space. Their flagship, called the Inevitable, is larger than Luna Base." Garcia's jaw tightened. "And we've stayed hidden," Wells said. "But that will change. If they detect us, we won't outrun them." Garcia was quiet a moment. "Then your mission is now elevated to Directive Omega. You are authorized to operate independently, gather all combat data possible, and delay their advance at any cost." Amber flinched. Directive Omega wasn't a defense order, it was a sacrifice. Wells stared straight ahead. "Understood, Admiral." The feed cut. He turned to his crew. "We've just been handed the impossible." Amber folded her arms. "So what else is new?" That earned a few ghostly smiles. Wells stepped forward, voice rising, not with fire, but with certainty. "We're not a fleet. We're one ship, but we are humanity's first answer. We will not hide. We will not wait to die. We'll find a way, not because we're stronger, but because we refuse to be erased." Around him, heads lifted, even in the dark, even against numbers they couldn't comprehend. Something awakened in them, something ancient, something very human. The USS Defender drifted silently behind the fractured shadows of a dense asteroid belt. Engines off, external lights disabled. Every unnecessary system put into cold mode. The ship, a spear of matte black armor and modular weapon ports, was buried beneath layers of magnetic interference, blind to most sensors. Commander Wells sat in darkness on the bridge, outside. The Invarian fleet had arrived, 20 large warships, armored like beetles. Their hulls glowed faint green along their ventral power spines. The Inevitable had returned, its massive silhouette blotting out entire swaths of starlight as it hovered above the atmosphere of Arcturus II. Beneath it, the colony on the planet's surface was already sending distress signals. Civilian, traders, refugees from multiple species, all begging for help. They had no military, no shields, no time. Wells watched the data scroll across his command screen. Tense silence cloaked the bridge. Amber's voice broke the stillness. They've started ground deployment. Tacticals show over 300 drop pods. Kelly turned. Sir, the colony is asking for aid. Multiple children detected among evac transports. They'll be overwhelmed in under an hour. Eric didn't respond immediately. His orders echoed in his mind. Observe only. Do not engage. But something else echoed louder. A scream. A mother, clutching her child on the broadcast from Terrius 4, just seconds before the planetary feed had gone dark. Eric, Amber's voice was low. Waiting, he stood. Helm prepare to break stealth. Tactical weapons online. Target. The destroyer moving toward the civilian transport. We're saving them. No approval from command. Brad Miller, chief engineer, asked sharply. None, Wells said. But I'd rather stand trial than watch another genocide. Amber nodded grimly. Firing solution locked in. The Defender's engines lit like flares in the night. The human warship leaped from its hiding place like a blade from shadow, slicing through the void toward the transport under attack. The Invarian destroyer, 10 times larger, adjusted to face them. But too late. Amber's fingers danced across her console. Twin lances of particle energy fired from the Defender's forward turrets, catching the alien ship mid-pivot. Massive explosions erupted from its weapon clusters. Armor plating ripped open. Secondary fires bloomed across its dorsal segments. The colony transport veered hard, its pilot seizing the chance. Lock tractor beam, Wells ordered. Get those civilians aboard. Tractor engaged. Docking underway. Then, impact, tremor, they're returning fire, shouted Kelly. The Defender's shields flared white-hot as it absorbed 2 glancing hits from distant destroyers. We need to move, Brad warned. We're not built for a stand-up fight. Wells nodded. Evasive maneuvers. Keep us between them and the transport. Another blast. The bridge shook. Warning sirens howled. But then came a sound that made every breath stop. 3 more Invarian ships peeled off from the fleet, moving fast toward their position. Amber stared at her tactical screen. They're not letting us leave. Eric clenched his jaw. Then we don't leave. Not until those civilians are safe. 3 minutes passed like 3 lifetimes. The Defender twisted and rolled through space, exchanging fire, its hull scorched and trembling under repeated hits. Inside the docking bay, civilian refugees scrambled aboard under the supervision of armed Marines. Children screamed. Medics worked over the wounded. Then docking complete, reported Kelly. All civilians aboard. Wells exhaled once, sharp and full of fury. Plot emergency jumped. Full burn to Earth's perimeter. Amber's voice was tight. We're not going to make it unless we drop them off mid-jump. No, they stay with us. The Defender's engines roared. The ship vanished into faster-than-light travel, battered, flickering, wounded, but victorious. Admiral Zexalon watched the replay in silence. 1 human vessel, 400 lifeforms aboard. It had destroyed a Invarian destroyer, evaded pursuit, and extracted civilians from a combat zone in 300 years. No species had ever done that. Admiral Sub-Commander Vextra said, hesitant. It may have been an anomaly. A prototype, Zexalon's voice rasped low. or a harbinger. He turned to the star map. We change our path, but our conquests can wait, Zexalon snapped. He stared at the blinking dot, marked Earth. I want to know how many of these humans exist, and whether they are the beginning of our empire's end. The USS Defender limped through the darkness, her hull patched and her systems jury-rigged. The glow of repairs flickered along her spine like open wounds still healing. Inside, the crew moved with urgency and exhaustion in equal measure, but their actions had shaken the galaxy. The data from the Defender's battle with the Invarians had gone viral across Earth's military networks. Analysts were stunned. AI war strategists had recalibrated threat models in real time. A single ship had fought the unstoppable. A single crew had changed the equation. Now, the world was racing to catch up. Shipyards on Luna and Mars worked around the clock. Reserve officers were called from retirement. Engineering academies turned into weapons labs. Civilian freighters were retrofitted with armor and drone guidance pods. And at the edge of known space, 4 warships gathered Earth's first coordinated strike fleet in over a century. USS Defender, USS Valiant, USS Dauntless, USS Resolution. The Valiant's conference room. Commander Eric Wells, now the symbol of Earth's resistance, stood with the other 3 ship captains, Susan Rodriguez, Neil Wilson, and Laura Simmons, holograms of the Invarian fleet rotated above the table, glowing insect-like projections, each one tagged with strength estimates and known behaviors. They move as one, Susan said. Perfect formations, no deviation, no hesitation. That's also a weakness, Eric countered. They don't respond well to irregular tactics. They think like a machine, overwhelming force in clean vectors. Captain Simmons frowned. So you want us to fight dirty? I want us to fight human, Eric said. We strike from odd angles, break formation, force them to react. Every second we delay them buys Earth time to finish building the defense fleet. They'll outgun us 10-1, said Captain Wilson. Then we don't give them a fair fight. Later, on board the Defender in the darkened bridge, Wells stood alone, outside in the starfield. His crew was prepping for a battle none of them had ever imagined surviving. He looked out the viewport. 3 weeks ago, they were explorers. Now, they were Earth's only line of defense. Amber stepped onto the bridge quietly. Her uniform was crisp, but her eyes showed the weight of sleep deprivation and buried fear. We're ready, she said. Not for this, Eric replied. But ready enough, she hesitated. You don't have to lead the charge. I already did, he said softly. Now I finish it. 6 hours later, asteroid field, Alpha Centauri. The human warships were hidden again, scattered among floating debris. Their engines were dark, communications silent. It was as if they were ghosts among broken stone. Then came the ripple, faster than light. Distortions tore the stars apart, and from them emerged the Invarian fleet. Over 200 ships, the condorly inevitable loomed like a god reborn. Eric stared at the tactical screen. Weapons status. All systems green, said Amber. Phase 1. Stand by. The Valiant moved first, flaring to life and firing twin kinetic blasts that crippled 2 enemy destroyers. Then the Defender moved, slicing into the Invarian rear, striking engines and sensor pods before disappearing again. Seconds later, the Dauntless and Resolute attacked from opposite flanks, targeting vulnerable flanks and weak rear armor, and just like that, The hive faltered. The Invarian formations broke, not from fear, but confusion. The perfect logic of their battle. Doctrine was being unraveled by chaos. They regrouped, adapted, but too late. Back on the inevitable Admiral Zexalon hissed. They're not following rules. They attack, then vanish. They do not hold formation. They are not a fleet. They are an infestation. Sub-Commander Vextra flinched. They have disrupted our synchronization across 3 battle groups. Then burn them all. Back on the Defender, the Valiant's shields are collapsing. Kelly shouted. Eric slammed his fist into the arm of his chair. Cover her. Bring us between. The Defender surged forward, taking the brunt of fire. Meant for the Valiant. Sparks flew across the bridge. A console exploded behind engineering, but they held the line. Amber gritted her teeth. We're reading 23 damaged Invarian ships. 6 confirmed down. We're bleeding them, sir. Eric glanced at the time. Keep bleeding them. Elsewhere in the battle, Captain Rodriguez gave the order to pull the Valiant from the field. The Resolute moved to escort it, both trailing. Hull breaches and power loss. The Dauntless and Defender remained behind. 2 ships against 200, Amber said. Eric narrowed his eyes. We're not here to win. We're here to teach them fear. The asteroid field had become a graveyard. Wreckage drifted in slow, chaotic spirals, alien debris mixing with human fragments, electrical arcs flickering like dying stars. The Dauntless had lost engine power. The Defender was scorched and bleeding atmosphere from its dorsal spine. But they still moved. They still fought on the Defender's bridge. Commander Eric Wells gripped the back of his command chair, blood running down his forearm from a gash above his temple. He barely felt it. Damage report, he barked. Shields at 12%. Brad replied from engineering, sweat pouring from his face. Weapons down to 30% capacity. Engines running hot. We're at redline tactical. Amber's voice cracked. We've got 17 confirmed kills. 31 more are damaged. But they're adapting, sir. Faster this time. Their rear guard is now split into squadrons. They're using rotation patterns to isolate us. They're learning, Eric muttered. And that was the worst part. The Invarians were no longer relying entirely on centralized hive commands. Ships were taking limited initiative. Their pilots, if one could even call them that, were responding to chaos, improvising. They're watching us, studying us, turning our own unpredictability into data. We don't have much time, Amber whispered. We need something bigger. On the inevitable Admiral Zexalon was silent. The feed showed 3 Earthships in retreat. A 4th had already broken off. His fleet was reorganizing, but something gnawed at the back of his mind. Something deeper than annoyance. A primal instinct, long buried by the collective's logic. Uncertainty. 1 ship Defender had survived 3 direct engagements. Each time, it crippled more of his own. He leaned forward. Target that ship with full command, priority, disable it. I want to study it, and the humans aboard. On board the Defender, Kelly's voice cracked from comms. They've shifted attention. 50 ships are breaking formation and moving toward us. Amber's eyes went wide. That's not a pursuit. That's an execution squad. Eric turned, locking eyes with each member of his bridge crew. This is the final round, he said. We can run, but Earth loses time, or we stand, and give the bastards something to choke on. We'll stand, said Amber. No hesitation. Brad nodded. Hell yes. Kelly quietly wiped her eyes. I'll alert the medbay to prepare for incoming. Commander Wells' final plan, Brad. Divert all remaining power to engines and forward shields. Done. Amber, what's the range on our new targeting AI? Wide enough. Then load every remaining torpedo. Use the spine rotation algorithm. We'll spin fire while diving. Amber paused. We've never tested that in combat. It could rupture the aft corridor. Eric smirked through bloody teeth. Then let's see how much the Defender can live up to her name. The last run the Defender surged forward at full burn. Dozens of Invarian ships fired, energy beams raking across her flanks, melting armor, disintegrating hull layers. But she didn't stop as she passed into the upper edge of a nearby gas giant's atmosphere. Her weapons bay rotated one smooth, seamless spin. Torpedoes launched in spiraling vectors. A rain of fire curved backward across the void, targeting command vessels in the Invarian fleet. 7 detonations, 3 command nodes offline, 1 direct hit on the Inevitable's primary power junction. On the Inevitable, alarms screamed. The bridge crew stumbled. Red mist sprayed from a ruptured coolant line. Zexalon clutched the railing. As the ship's spine twisted unnaturally, status, he demanded. Main reactor compromised. Rear armor destroyed. They fired backwards. Admiral. Zexalon froze. He stared at the replay. At the way the human ship had rotated mid-dive. At the way its torpedoes had curved, like they'd known exactly where the weakest links were. This wasn't instinct. This wasn't luck. This was calculated. Vengeance. Inside the gas giant, the Defender plunged deeper, burning through atmosphere. Her hull screaming in protest. We can't stay in here long, Brad shouted. Hull integrity dropping by the second. Eric stood, legs swaying. We have a lock on the Inevitable. Amber, tears in her eyes, gave a single nod. Target confirmed. Then let's make history. Final salvo. The missiles streaked upward from the storm clouds, blue trails slicing through red clouds like lightning. On the Inevitable, seconds later, impact, direct hit. The bridge exploded. Power died. Zexalon's final sight was the planets. Clouds below, swallowing their flagship in silence. Space above the battle. Out of the gas giant, the Defender re-emerged, barely intact. Armor gone. Life support minimal. Systems flickering, but alive. Earth ships dropped out of FTL. Dreadnoughts, interceptors, carriers. Admiral. Garcia's voice boomed across all channels. Defender, this is Earth Defense Fleet. You gave us time. Now let us repay the favor. Eric collapsed back into his chair. The bridge, silent for hours, erupted in exhausted cheers. The Inevitable, once the symbol of Invarian perfection, was adrift. Smoke pouring from its broken hull. The Hive had lost command coherence, and for the first time since their empire began, they retreated, not from strength, but from something they had never encountered. Human resolve. The Defender was barely a ship anymore. She docked under her own power, but just barely. Hull panels dangled loose like broken armor on a wounded knight. Her reactor flickered. Life support failed on 4 decks. Dried blood and carbon soot marked every corridor. But when she arrived at Earth's primary fleet station, she received a hero's welcome. Tugboats flanked her. Marines saluted her from gantries. Engineers wept when they saw her scars. In the command hangar, Commander Eric Wells stood in his torn uniform, flanked by Amber Garrett and the remaining crew. Behind them, 23 refugees, once marked for death, stood alive. Admiral Garcia approached. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "You changed everything." Eric swallowed hard. "We followed orders, mostly." Garcia cracked a brief smile. "You didn't follow orders. You wrote a new doctrine." He turned to the officers and soldiers crowding the observation deck. "Let it be known," Garcia said, raising his voice, "that the Defender, outnumbered, outgunned, and written off, taught us the truth, that the Hive is not invincible, that courage, not numbers, wins the first battle, and that Earth does not yield." The hangar roared with applause. Amber leaned toward Eric. "You just became a legend." He shook his head. "The legend is the crew, not the commander." News of the Battle of Alpha Centauri spread like wildfire. Neutral species across the galaxy took notice. Some offered quiet praise. Others reached out with encrypted signals, offering technology, information, or secret alliance. The Hive, for the first time in 300 years, halted its expansion. Colonies that were scheduled for assimilation were delayed. Troop deployments were pulled back. New algorithms were deployed across their fleets. Algorithms labeled human counter-adaptation protocols. The Hive had learned a new word, fear, in a solemn session of the Unified Planetary Council. Commander Wells stood before the governing body, not to testify, not to beg for more ships, but to tell the truth. They thought we were soft, because we laugh, because we love, because we debate and argue and change our minds. They thought we were weak, because we cry, because we mourn, because we hesitate before we kill. But what they didn't understand is that when we rise, when we fight, we do so as one. The chamber stood silent. Then, Counselor Olivia Martinez, voice shaking, stood. "Commander Wells, the world owes you a debt that can never be repaid. What do we do now?" Wells didn't hesitate. "Now we build, we train, and when they come again, because they will, we'll be ready. And this time, we won't just defend. We'll show them what happens when humanity decides to advance." Over the next 3 months, Earth launched the second defense fleet, 5 times the size of the first. A new training program was established, based on Defender's crew tactics, asymmetry, unpredictability, sacrifice. First contact teams were deployed to forge alliances with species once too afraid to resist the Hive. The legend of the Defender reached even the outermost colonies. Children played with toy versions of the ship. Artists painted its ragged form over a blood-red gas giant. Veterans wore patches that read, "We stand because they did." Deep in uncharted space, inside the biomechanical spires of the Hive world Varnthal, Admiral Zexalon stood before the Core Intelligence Nexus. He submitted his report. He played the recordings again. One ship, dozens of strikes. A fleet misdirected, divided, humiliated. The Nexus pulsed with slow, simmering light. And then they are dangerous. They cannot be absorbed. They must be destroyed completely. Zexalon paused. "No," he whispered aloud, "not through the neural link." With his own voice, "They must be understood, because they are what we are not." The Nexus pulsed again. Unacceptable deviation. "You will be replaced." But Zexalon turned, quietly, calmly. "I will learn from them, or I will become like them. And with that, he severed his neural thread. The hive had lost its first admiral to independent thought, because the humans hadn't just disrupted battle formations. They had corrupted the silence inside the hive, in orbit around a newly rebuilt Earth Fortress station. The Defender, now repaired and upgraded, floated with a new emblem on her hull. Not a military crest, not a fleet number, but a black flag, stitched with silver stars. It meant no surrender, no retreat, and no mercy for those who threaten peace. Inside, Commander Wells watched the stars, not with fear, but with fire. Let them come. We're not just ready, we're waiting.